Well, so Carrie Potter, my friend, tell
Yeah.
me about all the ways that you wish that it could have been easier to sell a house that you were listing. Like, so we're going to do this webinar on Tuesday, 11:30. Um, we're going to share horror stories. I've actually collected a couple. You and I have shared a couple like in real life. So what's the motivation? Like, why do you want people to hear about the horrific things that have happened to other people that you've tried to help sell their homes? Like, why is this something that they're going to care about?
That's a great question. There's so many reasons. I'd say the number one is because you think you just put a sign in your yard, your house sells, you move on. Like it seems so simple, but there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, and there's so many things you can run into that are completely unexpected. So to know that there's things, and you can't, like, one person is maybe going to sell a house every 5 years. So you can't possibly experience or know all the things that you need to be looking out for. When you're
Yeah.
doing it day all day, you get to experience and, like you said, hear stories of things that you're like, okay, so what could we have done to prevent that? And you can make sure that each transaction is as smooth as possible. But yeah, going it alone, there's just a lot can happen.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. And so right now with the whole NAR settlement, right? There's people trying to go it alone in numbers that you and I have never seen in our lifetimes, like this amount of people trying to go it alone. And is that like you can do it, right? Like somebody technically they could do it.
I
But
just had
like give
I
me
just had a closing that they did it, and
oh yeah.
it's a lot of work on everybody else
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they don't have a realtor looking out and doing all the things that they need to happen. So it's kind of
Yeah.
a, if you're an organized process kind of person, winging it is, is a wild ride. Hold on.
Yeah, so that's a good point about winging it. So, so like if I'm listing my house for sale and, like I find out that, like I did an oopsie, right? But that's okay. I got a realtor. She's just going to fix it, right? Like why can't I just, you know, hit the control Z and undo, and is that not a thing?
I wish that would be awesome. But yeah, I mean, it depends what people have done. And, contracts are legal and binding. So, I've met people that they're like, well, I don't really like this anymore and I want out. Like, they can sue you. Like, there's lots of bad things that can happen. So that's why there are so many people involved and attorneys are involved from the beginning. So you definitely having so many professionals involved and then removing them and dealing with it yourself, it's just overwhelming. It's one of those where you try and
Yeah.
learn something new and there's so many pieces that you don't even know how to start. Like, that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, well, you and I learned something on a deal recently, didn't we? That what did we learn? We learned that mobile homes and modular homes don't have the same plates on them, right? And how many days did we lose on our contract because we're running around looking for a serial number that at the end of the day we found out didn't even exist?
Yeah, exactly. And that was also Tennessee specific. So the mortgage person for the buyer was out of state. And so they thought it was different than it was in Tennessee. And they were wanting things that didn't exist. So it's state specific, it's area specific. Like, there's
Yeah.
so many variables.
Yeah. So let's just do a quick inventory. All the people that can be involved in this transaction and every hand that you have in the pot can spoil the brew, right? So we've got the home seller, right?
Yeah.
And then we got the home buyer, right? And then we've got the real estate agent if there's one helping sell the house,
Mhm.
right? And then we got the real estate agent if there's one helping buy the house, right? And then you're going to get the house inspected. So you've got an inspector, and that's an opportunity to mess things up. I've got a story that I just picked up yesterday
True.
about a family thought that they were going to make a good impression on the home inspector. And the only preview I'm going to tell you of this story is Moist. Okay.
Everybody
Exactly.
loves that word.
Exactly. So we got home inspectors and then we've got appraisers, right? And this is another experience that I've learned recently is a lot of people may not know this, but the lender orders the appraisal, but the lender can't talk to the appraiser, right? So we're trying to coordinate this deal, but that's another way that things can get messed up. And if the appraiser gets something wrong about the property, that's not bad for the buyer alone. That's bad for the seller too, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And a realtor can do some research, and we really can't talk to them either, but we can leave out our results that we found like on a counter there and be like, hey, here's what we see. Make sure you take these into account when you're looking at numbers.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So okay, so we've got most of the people in the transaction. Who do we have left in the transaction? We got the title company, right?
Yeah.
And
Maybe
then
two of them,
and
maybe two.
that's right. We got the title company on both sides of the transaction, right? And there's two lenders, right? No, one lender, but maybe two lenders, which is what I was going to add. That was another experience that you and I shared is that domino chain of home sale contingencies. I counted it, and how many did we have? We had, I think, 5 home sales strung up, every single one contingent on the other one.
Brutal.
And yeah, and we ended up having to pull out and then go back on the market because our contingencies weren't working out, right?
And they were
So
dependent on
this is what
somebody
do we
else.
count? Was this like say that again?
Another thing about that domino is one of those had like unrealistic expectations of selling their house, and we had zero control.
Yeah,
We had agreed that they could sell their house, but if it's priced $50,000 too high, it's not going to sell. So
yeah,
then
yeah.
everybody, yeah,
And that's a really good point. So, if you're trying to go it alone in this market, how do you know if the contingency that your contract is contingent on, how do you know if they're priced
yeah,
correctly? Like, how do you predict that? That's going to be really hard for somebody who maybe they never sold a house before. Maybe they haven't been in the housing market since 2018 and it's a different world today. Yeah, so there's a lot of things. I think I counted, what did I count? I counted 9 people. Count my fingers, that's 9. I'm an economist, so that makes me correct. Um,
but I
that's a
think
lot of
infinitely more because like after the home inspection, there's all the people that might be hired to do some work, or they might decide
yeah.
they want to get an inspection of the sewage, or it could go so many different directions after that. That's like a gateway to a whole bunch of more activities.
Yeah, yeah. So hold on, let me see if I understand this correctly. So are you telling me that selling your house is more complicated than just putting a for sale sign in the yard?
We all wish it wasn't, but unfortunately.